Deforestation rates within Queensland's rural regions have been an area of major concern in both past and recent years. The issue is heavily dependent on legislations and regulations enforced by the government. These legislations enforce restrictions on the harvesting of land, thus reducing annual land clearing rates. The new laws caused a massive decrease in the rates of deforestation from 2006 to 2010. However, the election of a new government resulted in the Vegetation Management Framework Amendment Act 2013. Regulations regarding broad-scale land clearing were weakened, and unsurprisingly, the rates of deforestation dramatically increased, almost tripling from 2011 to 2014. The most recent development in the ongoing issue involves the laws passed in March of 2018, which again saw the tightening of land clearing regulations. These laws intend to reduce the deforestation rates, particularly those of mature forest areas for large-scale agricultural developments. Whilst the laws are viewed by many conservation and environmental scientists as a step in the right direction for achieving more sustainable levels of deforestation, they have also caused a substantial amount of disapproval. Many of the landowners of Queensland's rural farming properties fear that the laws will restrict their abilities to clear vegetation from their properties for agricultural purposes. The article published in The Guardian outlines the importance of the newly enforced laws, as well as giving a brief history of the past policies that have been enforced, then scrapped by different governments. It also describes the protests from the farming communities and opposing governments. In order to further understand the views of those who oppose the new legislations, I spoke to a representative of AgForce, who has been vocal in their protests of the issue.
The newly enforced legislation poses a threat to all of our farmers in Queensland. The restrictions on how farmers will be able to manage their land will worsen their environmental conditions. The implication it will have on Australians' economy is enormous. Our farmers rely on that land to feed their families and feed this country. By essentially ripping it away from them, the government is making it harder and more expensive for them to produce the food that everyone in this country relies on. Many of these landholders have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into developing their land. These laws intend to strip them of their own properties. Queensland is the most valuable state for agricultural production, but I fear these laws largely reduce its efficiency. Downsizing the amount of land available for agricultural use will result in less food production and see prices for agricultural products soar.
To delve deeper into the science behind the issue, I consulted Mrs. White, an environmental scientist who has thrown her support behind the government legislation.
The effects of Queensland's overharvesting of vegetation has been detrimental to the environment. High levels of deforestation have been linked to an increasing amount of carbon emissions in recent years. As forests are cleared, the carbon stored in trees and shrubbery is released into the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is an incredibly effective heat-trapping gas, and the releases of large amounts causes rise in atmospheric temperatures. An estimated 3.8 million tonnes of carbon dioxide were released as a result of the land clearing in Queensland from 2013 to 2014. Deforestation is also linked to worsening drought conditions, as forests are known to be extremely efficient in storing moisture within the leaves and root systems of various trees and plants. Mass reduction in forestry within a landscape will reduce the amount of stored water used in evaporation and consequently result in less rainfall within the area.
Whilst both sides of the issue bring about valid points, those who support the legislation generally base their reasoning on scientific data and evidence, such as the heavily researched links between deforestation and climate change. Those who oppose the laws tend to bring up more opinion-based arguments, with no scientific basis or evidence to support them. It is also important to note that one of the biggest reasons for deforestation in Queensland is to make way for livestock production, with around 52% of the northeast currently under pasture. Queensland's primary industry commodities for 2017 to 2018 were estimated at $19.45 billion. The potential financial compensation from agricultural industries to other governments and organisations that vocalise their disapproval of the new laws, despite being presented with a solid body of evidence as for why these laws are being put in place, would greatly lessen the credibility of their opinions. The issue affects the triple bottom line in various ways, with the most obvious being the environment. The recent rates of deforestation within Queensland are unsustainable and will have a severe effect on all species living on Earth if allowed to continue. Although the legislation could affect the economy and individual landowners by restricting more agricultural production, the impact is minor in comparison to the irreversible effects of climate change and mass extinctions from deforestation. Unsustainable forestry is an issue that many countries deal with. One of the worst cases is the island of Borneo in Southeast Asia. Prior to mass industrialization in the 1950s, the island was covered in vegetation. According to the WWF, only half of the initial forest cover remains today. Most of the rainforests in Borneo are cleared to make way for palm oil plantations, a product which is exported to almost all countries and is crucial to the island's economy, producing billions of dollars annually. However, palm oil plantations cause severe environmental degradation to the surrounding tropical forests. They also have resulted in a 6 million hectare loss of overall forest cover, causing a large reduction in the amount of native species within the area. Although there are protection laws in place throughout Borneo, many of them are inadequate and provide no consequences to those who violate them. The devastating effects of unsustainable forestry in Borneo show the impacts of a society that values its economy over its environment. By evaluating the issue from multiple points of view, I was able to further understand the complexity of it. The negative effects of unsustainable deforestation are too large to ignore, and if we do continue to ignore them, the consequences to our planet could be devastating to all living on it. Although I now understand the concern of the legislation's effect on both the economy and landowners, I still believe that placing higher amounts of protection on vegetation is the most effective way to handle the issue of unsustainable deforestation.